say that I'm controversial, and but you could also say I don't share your view. So, and having said that, yeah, I just ended up just kind of wearing some labels like that because it was what it was. I think we're both Christians, and it's safe to say that Jesus was considered controversial. So there have been times in my life actually where I'm like, I hope I'm not too agreeable with a certain type of person. That would scare me worse than trying to feel what you mean by controversy. It's like I hope I'm living a life that's gonna cut the water one way or another.
Right.
So yeah. Over the years, it is what it is, you know.
So I think back to like I keep it funky. So I just want you to know I keep it funky fresh. I'm just gonna be.
I love that about you.
I think back to kind of this era when you were part of the Avengers, the pastoral Avengers. So, and I think that, you know, I was known in a more kind of conservative, like reform theological circle at that point in time. You know, you had yourself and Judah and Rich, and y'all were kind of like the mega pastors in more of a charismatic realm. And when I first kind of interacted with y'all, I was kind of like off of some of the stuff that people thought I was on. I was like, my faith has expanded a little more. I've diversified. I'm a little bit different. But I remember first I ran into Rich in Miami, I believe, and him and Andy were going out on the yacht to hang out, and he was like, I'm with Rich on the yacht right now, and I was like, why don't you invite me? And he was like, I think Rich kind of thinks you're not, you don't rock with him. And I was like, that's interesting. What did I ever say to Rich? And then I kind of felt like you would feel the same way. Like, Carl probably thinks I don't rock with him, or there's some tension, like we had some Christian beef. Did you feel that? Or okay,
no,
okay,
no.
I always wondered that. Okay, so when I first met you, or the era when I first met you, you know, you was a part of that world, and it was larger than life, right? Like every Sunday, you're doing your thing, you're around the world, you're traveling, you're larger than life. And for me, outside looking in, like, I know people are people. And I know, like, what everyone else sees probably isn't the reality. And also I know when people build you up so high, you know, their perspective of a fall is like vastly different. Do you feel like people, is it the pastors, is it the people that put themselves in a position where they're looked upon in an unhealthy way?
Fantastic question, Premise. I don't really know how to answer it because I was a part of it from one angle.
Okay.
And so when it comes to like, you know, did I put myself on a pedestal? The answer is a flat yes, because that's what you do when you accept a leadership position.
Okay.
So I'm a pastor. So by doing that right away, I put myself on different standards, different expectations that are legitimate. As far as the way people interact to it, I don't think you can never stop people from being human.
Okay.
It just is going to be a thing, and you can do everything you can to try to bridge that gap. I spent a lot of time in New York constantly feeling the weight of trying to bridge that gap about perception and never feeling like I was doing it. And I look back at that now with the new eyes that I have and some of the new tools, and I go, God, man, I really robbed myself because I really thought that I could please everybody. I was like, my thing was, I used to have this phrase, if I can get 5 minutes with anybody, worst case, they leave a friend. Best case, we believe the same things.
Sheesh.
And I was that confident, still am.
Sheesh.
I handle it differently, but because I had an innate need to be understood that I didn't know until this chapter. And what that does to you, I'm a new pastor in New York. I remember, like, you know, I used to wait to shake hands with everybody that would do it. I tried as long as I could, and then one Sunday I couldn't do it. Right away I heard some chatter about how we were untouchable, and I thought for a year I just Did, okay, well I'm gonna go back out. Bad motivation. Another time at church, shaking hands with people, and one lady was like, "Hey, I love what we're doing here. When are we gonna do something for the single moms in the Bronx?" I was like, "Yeah, tomorrow." Next person, "Hey, when are we gonna have youth ministry?" As soon as you can. Next person, "Hey, I don't know if we're doing enough to," and I remember internalizing all of this stuff as a young pastor going, "This doesn't feel great. I got a lot of work to do." Now, I would have been able to sit there and said, "Hi, there's a great church over there that already does that. They're awesome. You might fit better with it," right? But I don't know how to handle that stuff then. So, in regards to being on a pedestal, all you can do is control what you think about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think even at that time, you're aware that people are going to revere you in a way that's not healthy. But ultimately, you can only do the best you can to be honest about who you are and live your life. And so, it's a tough call, man. It's gonna happen, bro, because I love people that I don't really know, but I love them. I'm like that too.
Yeah.
There's some people I meet that I just am like, I almost don't want you to talk in case you're not who I think you are. I'd rather just keep us in silence because I think they're so incredible. But I think that too, man. We love who we love.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if your charisma and just your natural, because one thing I know about you, which I didn't know, which we had a kind of offline conversation before, is that you were always kind of a charismatic in the seat of attention before you became a pastor. Like a lot of people, just being honest, are like kind of like the homeschool, kind of like they didn't have any friends, they were not at the cool kids club, at the cool kids table, and then they get to be pastor, and then they lose themselves. Like, I'm the man up here. Look at me.
It's a lot.
And that was not you.
No, I was different than a lot of my friends in that regard because a lot of the friends that I rolled with, they were pastors' kids of pastors' kids of pastors' kids. They didn't have a life outside of this. All they've ever known is what it's like to be in that slipstream. I was blessed with a life that didn't lead to that. Like I had a different existence almost before I really started following Jesus in college. So yeah, it gave me a different angle on people, on how I felt, about how to reach people. And that was always something you guys I rolled with. I was always very different with that because I had a different experience of dating. So, but that's a great point. I think, yeah, I had a life before where, it wasn't too dissimilar.
Right.
Step into a role where you were going to try to make a difference.
Because I would think the criticism oftentimes, I've heard it about me, so I'm assuming you've heard it about yourself in some regard, is that you just want to fit in with the celebrities.
Right.
You're just trying to, like, instead of doing the Lord's work, you're trying to be a part of Hollywood culture. How would you respond to like those type of accusations?
What kind of answer you want?
I mean, keep it 100. Like I tell people,
Okay, a couple answers.
I was cool before you. You know what I'm saying?
There's a couple answers. One is that I like this theme, which is nobody who's ever doing better than you is ever going to criticize you. It's very true. And it's not always true, but most I found out to be true. So that's the first one when it comes to criticism. And so if you take that down the line, and you think about who says things like that, it's very revealing about the question asker, about the criticizer. You're just trying to be, so you can't know that. You don't know me. You can't know what I'm trying to do. Number one. So you're already in trouble.
You've assumed your motive.
You've already put a microphone to your soul. And now we know. But it's one of those like weird, often it felt like junior high insecurity. When I hear stuff like that. So I said, we're not trying to do anything. We all, this pastor trying to be cool. Now we're just cool. Like, we're not trying to be anything. In fact, those people are asking me about my shoes, not vice versa, right? Or whatever, like, that always, it didn't give me like a bristle. But I just thought, isn't that funny? Like, the moment, we're just living our regular lives. And the problem with social media is that, like, the narrative about us often would get twisted in that larger than life is true to a degree, but 99% of the time, very normal, chill, placid, regular life. The 1% you see is outrageously cool.
Right.
And so people are like, these guys roll. It's like, no man, I got 3 kids and a wife and trying to manage the church, and you see a snippet of it, and how foolish can we be? So walking into a movie 2 hours in, and you're like, this movie's the worst. You have seen nothing from it. You have no idea how it's going to end, and you're going to be a movie critic now. I felt like that when it comes to no guy trying to fit in. Well, you know right away that you're speaking about an area that you've never been, which to me is always unwise.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Craig's trying to fit in with those rappers. How would you know what those rappers want?
Yeah.
How would you know what goes on in those rooms? Like,
Yeah.
how foolish can that criticism possibly be? So I always gave it like a real quick flick of like, you gotta be kidding me. You know, we're over here trying to do our best, and something in you is triggered with who we're around.
That's good.
Yeah, you tried to turn it into some sort of righteous indignation thing.
Yeah.
That's not true either.
Right.
You're just mad about something else.
Right.
And I wonder what about seeing someone with a group of people makes you mad. And I think that's a question I would often pose to people when they would say something like that.
Yeah, because from where I would be sitting, I would imagine like with the charismatic gifts you have, there's a much more sexier, secular role you could be playing in society that allows you to rub shoulders with these people without all of the critiques and the criticisms. Like to be a pastor is not like a cool job. It's not like something.
No, you're not walking in and people go, come on, pull up a chair.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, all right. So I remember my kids were little, and at one point I had 3 under 4. As much as I was focused on providing for them in the moment, diapers, daycare, lullabies, I actually had to start thinking about the future. And because I wasn't raised in a household where we talked about future planning, financial planning, life insurance, or anything, I had to figure all this out on my own. Today, I have an incredible opportunity. Fabric by Gerber Life offers flexible, high-quality policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. And they partnered with Gerber Life, which is a company trusted by millions of families for over 50 years. There's absolutely no risk. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel anytime. Plus, nearly 2,000 parents have given Fabric a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. So you know you're in good hands. And it's not just life insurance. Fabric helps busy parents with free digital wills, access to investment accounts. All this stuff is managed right from your phone. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. I am looking out for you. Look out for yourself. Look out for your family. Apply right now. It takes minutes. Go to meetfabric.com/Lecrae. That's it. All right. Policies are issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, and it's not available in certain states, and the prices obviously are subject to underwriting and health questions. But listen, this is what you need. All right. Make sure you go sign up. And we'll walk down some of these paths, but I'm just trying to grasp some of the thoughts that I know people probably preconceived ideas that they already have. Yeah. One, I'm curious your vantage point, because some people say, man, there's genuine restoration that's happened with Carl Lentz. Some people say he's just rebuilding another platform. Obviously, no one can know except you.
Correct.
So what would you say you're doing in this season of your life?
I would say I'm living a really healthy, happy life, and it feels really good. I gave up on this chapter of my life. Thank God. I shouldn't say I gave up. I feel like God ripped it out of me. That need to be understood. And you hear a church like that about the platform stuff, but it's like, it's not even worth the conversation, because you already made a judgment about something that really only I'm going to know. God's going to know. I can answer it practically. And say that if I was going to build another platform, I would have done it years ago. It wouldn't be what I'm doing. But even no matter what answer you give someone like that, you don't know how they frame that question or what it really means. So to the people who would say something like that, I don't know if I trust you. I'd say that's fair.
Yeah.
No other response.
Okay.
I can't try out for you either. So if you want to watch my life, I'm gonna be here for the next hopefully 80 years. Doing the best I can. If at some point you deem me worthy of your trust, I'm so happy for you. If you never do, that's well within your rights too. I'm so excited about who I can speak to that I'm gonna stay over there focused on that. So I can't prove to you that some things in my life has changed, nor do I want to. Guess who I have to prove stuff to? So
come on now.
She's an Australian.
Come on now.
And she's my wife.
Come on now.
And that caught me like a left hook there, brother. No, when I think about the word prove, it's like Dear Rizzo, who I love dearly, the Godfather, he told me early on, I said, Carl, you got 4 people to win in this sport, and that's it. You win those people in your house, you'll never be sorry a day in your life. And that's what I got busy doing. So I'm good. So it's like if people don't trust or they're waiting, you got all that. I'm over here with my family that I love, and we're building that. And I got a new lease on life. Not a lot of people can say that. I do believe life is split down the middle anyway. We all get 2 really big chapters, and I had a great chapter. 40 before year 40. Serious pain in there, for sure. But I've learned how to even switch that, the way I hold that. It's like I wouldn't be here, Lecrae, talking to you with the peace that I have, had I not gone through those painful chapters. So, yeah, man, I'm not building a platform, and at the same time, isn't everyone trying to build their life? Like, what would you like me to do? The person says that, like, I'm not, what do you mean building a platform? I have one.
Yeah.
Didn't go here.
Yeah. I think, you know, it's unfortunately we're always under public scrutiny, and I mean, you know, obviously, sometimes we give reason, like you said, that's fair, but you got to move forward. And I do think it's a testament for your family to be here and to say, that's my dad, that's my husband, I'm still here. I think, to me, that speaks much louder than, because unless you have a family, you don't know the level of manipulation it would take to get them to be like champion.
I trust you, Dad.
Right.
Right. We take that for granted. I don't.
Right. Exactly. So I, you know, to me that speaks a much louder to me. I am curious from your perspective. You know, I've been behind the scenes. I kind of know how the sausage is made in a lot of what I call the evangelical industrial complex. Right? And I wonder from your vantage point, do you think the evangelical church understands what it means for a leader to fall, or is it about image control?
It's definitely about image control, brother.
Okay.
What I've learned to do in this chapter is just, it's almost case by case.
Okay.
And when it comes to how the evangelical church, well, unless we can articulate what that means, I like to move it to the left, because then I feel like it's unfair either way.
That's right.
Someone's getting a pass or someone's getting a fail. It's
That's
like,
good.
no, from my experience, my worldview, and I have a big one, you know, and it would appear very safe to say that it's image first, and the image second, get around to probably image third, and then we'll see what's left. And I know that from personal experience, and then in this chapter, I have had the privilege and the painful honor of helping other people through something similar. And it's a pretty staggering rate of someone who's been disregarded. It's hard to see. And so, yeah, I don't know if it's an evangelical church shot in the face.
Sure.
I just think it has a lot to do with where people's values are.
Yeah.
And it's hard, brother. Like I think I had some people, even the way I talk about what happened has changed so much even in the 4 years. Like I used to say, people like, you know, some of your friends bailed, and I'll be like, back then, maybe fair, now, some did. A lot of friends did not at all. The ones who did hurt, yeah, because we were close. It was only a couple. But now I actually had great friends. Hey man, the church turned their back on you. Yes, it did. In some ways it felt like that. My church did. But then Randy Bezet at Bayside Community in Florida, he didn't turn his back on me. A couple other people didn't turn their back on me. And I wouldn't be sitting here. But a bunch of pastors helped me, you know, in a lot of dark places. But overall, I would say, yeah, we have a problem with image control. And it's coming to an end quickly.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where either you dismantle it or God will. And if you're smart, you'll do it in your own time.
That's right.
But eventually, it's like, no, this isn't the single work. So, and you see it, brother, when people do fall, the reaction speaks so loudly to what you care about. And I saw that in some of my friends too. It was like, their reactions was like, how's it make me look? It's not right or wrong. We just need to own it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of churches, their first move, and my thing is always about ownership. So if you're a church that does that, just say that. We're a church here, if we go through a scandal, we're going to put the business first. We're going to make sure everything's shored up. And we're going to cut ties with anything that could hurt the name of the church. Everybody clear? And then if we can, we're going to help the family.
That would be wild.
Just be honest.
That
That's
would
what
be
you're doing.
crazy.
But I would respect that more.
For sure.
Than the double talk that you get. Of like,
Well, that's what happens, but no one says that.
They don't.
That would be crazy, though.
Right?
If people just came out and like, just so you know, we're going to act like we don't know you.
Yeah. No matter how long you've been here,
Yes.
no matter what you've done, if you make a deadly mistake that could hurt all that I've built, all that we built, we will absolutely disassociate from you quicker than you can say disassociation.
But do you think that is the symptom of a bigger problem? Like in my mind, I feel like if a lot of, and I'm not talking about the church, the big church, like the global church that God has established.
Yeah.
But a lot of times in the Western world, we have these institutions that are run more like businesses than churches. And to me, that makes sense in a business world, right? Like we expect that. We expect, well, you were the vice president of the company. You're making the company look bad. Our stockbroker, our stock is going to go down. We got to throw you to the side. But a church, like I'm trying to process, like a church is supposed to be about healing, hope, restoration. Supposed to be. I mean, obviously there's discipline, but there should be restoration. What I'm curious about, because see, I'm privileged. I know what goes on behind the scenes. I've been behind the scenes a lot.
Yeah.
But a lot of people haven't. And rarely do we get somebody who's been there, who can talk about it. What would you say are some of the things that people would be shocked about being a pastor of a massive church?
Man, you're a great interviewer. It's a great podcast. It is. I think you said something right before that about the business of the church.
Oh, yeah.
My question to that sometimes is yes, but we cannot have it both ways. So if we're going to run our churches better, there should be business acumen involved. That's just responsible.
For sure.
And we don't like it when it dips the wrong way on either front. So if the church mismanages its money, well, you also criticize them for being a business.
Absolutely.
So they fired all the finance people, whatever, and they're doing it like mom and pop used to do it. They're counting the checks in the back. Now you can criticize them for lack of stewardship. In that same way, if we're going to accept a business model for a church, which I'm not for or against, it's just when it goes bad, we also can't be shocked when we treat it like a corporation as well. So we can't celebrate it when a church brings in $100 million annual revenue. And because that took business savvy to do it. And then when that same organization acts like a business on this front, that we already exposed to, we care about business and we celebrate it. Therefore, it would be awesome if that wasn't like that. But I always find people getting tripped up with the fact that you don't see that it's already intertwined. Churches shouldn't act like it. They shouldn't act like what? Hey, what should a church act like? Where are you getting that from? Where's your frame from? Where's your foundation? Always crickets. And then secondly, like, well, what do you mean you can't believe that a church like mine disassociated with somebody like me? First of all, the best way to stay out of that situation is to not lie. Okay? Let's not get that twisted, LePrey. Okay? Was that clear, Joshua? I just want to be clear, like, no matter what I say from here on out, the best thing anybody can do is live honestly. Be exactly who you say you are. And own it when you fail. I didn't do those things for a period of my life.
You're saying you're not shifting the blame.
No.
You're saying I own what I did.
And even though I'm not on TikTok, I know how these little folks work.
You're right.
They're going to mash it all up and be like, no. Nobody is to blame for me. The treatment that I received is neither here nor there. That's a great discussion. The act is what I have control over.
That's right.
And my follow-through of that act, which I will be in the midst of for the rest of my life. By act, I mean, the decisions I made that I would like to do differently. So, all that to say, I just think sometimes we got to pick what we want. Don't celebrate your church and it's 9 buildings, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars it might bring in, and then get a little bit queasy when you see something businessy happen.
I respect that. I actually respect that, because that's actually more accountability on your side. You're actually saying, nah, I'm not going to sit here and act like I wasn't ringing the bell when the stock market hit, and then like, how dare y'all? When I was I was gold stock market on the other side.
And it trickles all the way down to how you ask people to volunteer. So if we're gonna rock a business model,
Yeah.
well, I've never been to Nike. One time, and they've been like, hey, do you mind staying after, helping us clean up these boxes? No, sir, I'm a customer here. Yeah, but we're gonna need you. If you do love the brand, you do. We could really use some help back there because we've only got 4 guys on staff, and I've never been like, yeah, let me go. And so our product is different. True. And we can preach it different. True. And it is awesome to volunteer for your local church. My point is, try to be consistent across the board. Yeah. So if you're going to tout yourself as a business leader, church guy, cool. Let's see if that's consistent all the way through. Just a thought. It's not a right. It's not a wrong. I am pro. I volunteer. I will always volunteer.
Right.
What I did, lead a church. I'm very passionate about it. My point is, there's a lot of fallacy double talk in our modern church theology that people just don't really want to talk about because it's too complex. So my thing is, if we want to talk about it, go ahead and go over through it. And we don't have to make judgments on it. We just need to be honest.
I love that. In this season of my life, that's where I'm at. I'm at the place of like, hey, I'm okay with tearing the wall down. We don't have to tear the whole foundation apart. But let's tear that wall down. Let's see, build this one. See those walls don't match.
And what's the real reason for tearing it down?
Okay, cool. Exactly. Great. I actually respect that. That's a lot of the kind of.
It's like if you go buy a car and the guy is like progressing. I would rather have the guy say, hey, by the way, I get the sale. I win December for my dealership. I'm really needed. Thank you, brother. I respect that. Whether I get it or not, but I know now you're not just pressuring me so much because you really want me to have it.
Right. It looks really good on me, man. I see you in this car.
But because you told me up top of what it really was, I actually trust what you might say behind it way more.
That's absolutely true.
So I just think there is a chapter to be played in church where people just start to really lean into what they really need.
Yeah.
And I think people will gravitate to it because that's what honesty does.
I feel like you're in a position, because I think, a lot of people don't recognize and realize some of the soul work and the healing, because they're just, a year or two for some people is quick, but 365, 700 days of 24 hours a day of navigating through your own brokenness and coming to a place of healing is a lot of time to process things. I actually think you're in a better position to express some of these issues because, one, I think people can trust a broken man. Right? It's like, okay, he's broken. He's nothing to gain here. He's not covering his tracks. And he's already seen the machine doesn't work the way he thought it would. He's been shooting up. But on the flip side, also, you're not a crusader from the outside looking in. You're somebody who's saying, like, nah, I was a contributor. You're Paul in a lot of ways, talking to the Jews. Like, I was a Jew on Jews. What are you saying? Like, I was killing the Christians over here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think in many ways, he a lot of people respected his gear because he came from that side. So that kind of leads me back to that question I was asking you, like what don't we understand about the role you have as a pastor, as a lead pastor? Like, what are some uncomfortable truths about being a pastor?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always used to couch it the same way I'm going to now, which is every single calling has its unique pressures and pain points that nobody's going to understand. That's a fact. And that's true about being a pastor. I think that the pressure of every church is run different. I can speak from my experience and those that I help lead in that regard. There's a lot. It's the expectation's heavy, and if you don't have the tools, which I did not, which I know a lot of pastors do not, and I'm pretty passionate about making sure they get it quicker than I did, brother. If you don't have the tools to manage what that is, it will eat you alive. So this is a spiritual toll, it's a practical toll. That's unique to being a pastor. Not everybody, you run a big corporation right now, that has its own pressure I can't understand. You won't know the pastor's pressures that he's in all of. And I think even knowing that respectfully just helps you place how you're going to judge anybody. So what people can't understand, what you can't quantify, what I cannot articulate even now, is what it feels like to carry the calling of shepherding God's people. It's extraordinarily heavy. And that's why the Bible says to be really slow before you get involved in it. And it's a special and heavy price that you willingly accept. And it's going to be impossible for people to understand. And on this side of it, when I see people criticize, whether it's me or other pastors, I go, they just, people are just not going to get this. And you have to really want to be a deep person to give more thought, less criticism. This is not the world we live in. It's just so much more fun for my dopamine, for me to throw out a mean comment right now that matches all these other 17 mean comments.
Right.
Maybe I can find a friend in that.
Right.
By the way, if you're finding friends in the mean comment threads, you gotta talk. You gotta send you some help. But my point is, it takes thought to wonder, what must it be like to run a record label? So I don't have to agree with what Lecrae did or doesn't do, but I also am not going to assume that I know what that's like. You just have the right to make your calls as you're going to make them. To me, just is always help me frame respectful dialogue with anybody. Like, I don't care who you hate. You can hate a politician, and you can still understand and acknowledge. You cannot know what that's like. And it just seems like a safer place to attack any issue.
Yeah. I think when the news broke and everything went down about, you know, everything that blew up for you, I think there were a mixture of different responses and the different perspectives. Obviously, you were silent at that point in time, which you should have been, from my perspective. But there was a lot of criticism in general about Christian leaders falling. There's not a lot of conversation around gluttony, or I don't hear anybody I don't hear church discipline about greed ever. I don't hear that one. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's such a bigger scandal? Like, certain sins are more scandalous than others. There's more judgment, more critique, more reason to throw a person away than others.
I think it's level of consequence, to be honest with you. I think that some of it is, like in my case, when there's sexual sin, it demands different consequences. So there is more weight to it, and typically it is later. Probably some other things you name, that's why it can be frustrating on the other side, because you realize the hypocrisy in some ways, in the way we hold people accountable. But when it comes to an issue like mine, it was a perfect storm. I mean, it was, if you wanted to make it salacious, it could have been that. If you want to make it, drama-filled, could be that. If you wanted to pretend that these three people mean that they can tell a whole narrative about the culture of the church, okay, let's run with that. Like, it was a dream. And it was also a dream for people who couldn't stand guys like me. Okay. They were waiting for someone like me to fall, so it's like a floodgate of, I told you. And I had to wear that. I hated that, because I loved the fact that I wasn't that guy until I was. I had so many people who would say, I really love you now, I believe in you. There's a lot of dudes who kind of creep me out, but you seem like you're one of us, and I trust you, and you're different. And then there'd be the critic who'd be like, I know you can't be who you say you are, or whatever. And I always say, watch the space when you want to. So that was something that took me a long time to get over, because I carried that with pride. And even now, knowing my own duality and stuff that I hadn't figured out, and they have a case. They want to make it that. Those guys can't be the real deal. Well, turns out I still don't agree. But I gave ammo for people who wanted a really beautiful on-ramp to just attack churches that had anything to do or look like we had. Yeah. So we're coming after all these guys. Okay, cool.
Did you beat yourself up for confirming their suspicions in some kind of way?
No, because of the help I got.
Okay.
Brother, man, when my life changed, I look back now and I hated it at the time. I mean, have you ever had moments like that where you look back on something, you're like, God, why? And then you look back at the same thing, you're like, thank you. And like, why is it going down like this? If my situation didn't go down exactly as it went down, I don't think I ever could have changed the things I needed to change.
Yes.
One degree off?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Like 1 degree this way? No. If that one friend that I thought I really loved and needed, if he doesn't go, the 17 that I do actually need and want, they're not here. And if I'm able to lie and hide, like what was horrible and unique about my situation is that I had a feeling that in a position of power that I had, there's probably going to be some stuff that's not true.
Yeah.
So when I told Laura, initially, I didn't have the luxury of a slow drip disclosure. A slow drip disclosure is when you got caught for something, and then 3 or 4 months later, someone else was like, "Yeah, that was true too," and that was true too.
Because it was coming down the pipeline, and you had to get to it before the
Why
war.
did I tell Laura? I said, "This is what's true. This is what isn't." And as long as you know that we believe that, I don't really care. The noise is the noise. And I'm really glad I got that advice, because otherwise I would have spent rather than heal, change, grow, own, focus on the impetus for all of this, I would have been deflecting blame, defending, snapping back. Sometimes I had just reasons to do it, and instead I just turned my back to it. And I looked at this new chapter in my family, and I just said, this is what's going to matter. And I'm grateful, brother, because there's nothing you can do. It comes a point where you can't. We don't live in a world right now where there's time for the second part of the story. So if I accuse you of being a jerk, that gets the press. Now I might come back 2 days later like, I was wrong. Nobody cares. That's our culture. So you can embrace that and accept that and move on with it and go, it is what it is. I can't stop people. I can't control people and their perception of me.
Well,
And I don't want to.
how do you? Well, before I get there, I want because you brought up, your family and Laura. Obviously, that's the hardest part of everything. What that you are comfortable with talking about, like what was that difficulty like? What were you dealing with at home?
Yeah, I think, man, I mean, so what I've mentioned it, way early on in this pod journey that we're doing, which you can find on the east side, like 3 weeks before the news about me came out, my daughter Charlie had attempted to take her life, and she was in a mental hospital. And it was the hardest thing I've ever walked. And to this day, it's the worst, hardest, and most beautiful chapter. And so I was already in a bad way. And I was in a bad way for months leading up to that. And so it was already so tumultuous that, we just didn't know which way was up. And to watch the look on you being a dad, our job is to anchor. Our job is to strengthen. Our job is to protect, and to see your family shaking in the wind because of what you did is a position I want no man to ever know. But I know, and I remember it, and I'll never forget it because it makes me better. And I'm going to tell everybody I can when I get a chance, hey, if you're open to a smarter, wiser way, let me tell you about the day that I had to look at my children and my wife. You don't want to be there, and you don't have to be there. Do you know how many chances God gave me to off-road this destructive highway I was on? So many. That's why people ask me, were you mad at God? How? Confused at times, sure, but mad. Like, all I remember, and it's given me a beautiful perspective when I do talk to people who struggle with some of the things I did. God has always been with me in my lowest. This Bible, made my bed in hell. I've lived that. Felt God's presence just as strongly in the throes of my sin as I did at the peak of whatever would be an evangelical summer, preaching a message to cool crowds. Well, God didn't abandon me because I was making bad decisions. In fact, those are the times I remember His voice the most. And so all that to say, I'm just grateful, bro, that I get to get to do better, you know?
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that that's not my story.
Mm.
And it might be what somebody knows about my story, one part of it, but I can't, if you want to keep reading, come talk to me.
Right.
That's a chapter.
Yeah.
And it's a hard one, and I am just overwhelmingly grateful to God to be able to be sitting here, and we all have the power to change our story, brother. Like, I don't care what somebody's done, I don't care where they've been, I don't care what they walked through, only you hold the pen to your story.
Yeah.
That's it. No matter what you feel. And so I had to really, there are times I wanted to get that thing wet. You right. You right. You got a discouragement rather than just discuss.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, let me just see what I can do. Start writing some new pages. But letting them down in that way made me a better man today.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that, man. And I can relate in more ways than you understand. There's a leader who prominent, wise, godly guy, and he ends up sleeping with another man's wife and plots and plans on how to not get caught and how to alleviate the situation, and ends up plotting to take her husband's life. And unfortunately, the plot comes to fruition, and he goes on about his life, right? No, you don't see any sign of like him feeling bad about what he did, until he's caught, right? Obviously, you know who I'm talking about, right?
You do.
Right. So, if you don't, it's David.
The brother from Arkansas.
Right.
He kills somebody.
But it wasn't that he got caught. He lived in a different culture, Shaman honor culture. So they process things in a completely different way than we process. When he understood the weight of his sin, he was remorseful and was comforted by God. I don't think people want Christian leaders to be comforted or restored. I don't. I think what we want, and it's not just Christian leaders, I think it's leaders in general.
Especially Christian leaders. It's a good point, brother.
So I think we want penance.
Yes.
I think we want to burn someone at the stake.
Yeah.
I like speak to that, like, because obviously
You need to. Waters I prefer to have over coffee, brother. No, I think you're speaking to something that is just dynamic and true. And I thought about this in the airport yesterday with Laura. It's so funny because I think we love to make our own grading scales. We love it, and we do it all the time. And sometimes it's awesome. You have a grading scale. Like, I will be a nice guy. If you say something to my daughter, I'll go to prison. Yeah, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, prison ministry for the rest of my life.
So I think I'm forgiving, and I don't play with my daughters, right? You don't play with yours. So in that vein, you look at like what happens to ministers, and I think what people say with their spirit is, I want you to suffer equal to the position you have. That's what it feels like. So the bigger your platform, the more spite, and the more hate, and the more vitriol, and the more penance is a great word, even though it's nowhere to be found in the gospel. That's an American Christian currency, brother.
Yeah.
And you can't, and why it can be frustrating, and you don't have your inner world in order. You can't re-enter life because everybody is their own judge and their own jury. So that guy's not repentant. Okay, sir. What do you mean? Well, if you were repentant, you would do this for 15 years. Thank you for your opinion. Next guy. That's not repentant. I'll tell you what repentant is. It's quoting everything in the King James for 2 years. That would show me that you really understand the devil. Thank you, sir. Next guy. True penance. If you were really repenting, you